Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Matt Paradise. He's an award-winning author, financial educator, keynote speaker, helps people transform financial stress into confidence and lasting well-being. As a former homeless teen turned millionaire, and we learn from him how to shift harmful money mindsets, take simple step towards financial independence, confidence, and apply the concept of whole health, wealth in your life or workspace. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you, Ajay. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited about
You
having
are,
a conversation this morning with you.
you are welcome. Welcome to the show, Matt. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about breaking financial stress, building real wealth in one's life. We'll talk about this. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Sure. And in the introduction, you mentioned as a teenager, I was homeless. Drugs, addiction, and poor decisions led me to a path that was challenging, to say the least. My family gave an ultimatum that I either needed to be sober and be okay for my younger brothers and the people around me. Addiction destroys relationships, destroys families, and it certainly did for me at that time. So I left. I was on the street for some time. I tried to find couches or floors where I could sleep and try to find some shelter, and was challenging. Still, well, a high school student. So in the United States, where I went to school, I was about 15 years old. I overdosed and really by grace was able to survive those years. I did not envision a future past 20 years old. It was just deep, dark depression and suicidal ideations, and was again difficult to say the least. So I knew that death, jail, or insanity was inevitable and needed to change. Anybody who's ever gone through any type of transformation, whether you can relate to drugs or alcohol and use or addiction there, if you've ever tried to change, when we move, we take our baggage with us. And there's some internal work that needs to be done so that we can transform into a life. With those changes, long-lasting change generally comes as a result of a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I did not have the internal motivation to change. I didn't envision a future with any type of hope. And when we lack hope for a better future, we tend not to make the best decisions in our current present moment. That being said, there were mentors and people who cared enough about me who envisioned a life where I'd survived past 20 and was able to be productive and healthy and find joy despite the pit of despair that I was in as a teenager. And for me, that made all the difference in the world. Someone who cared, someone who showed hope when I felt none. And that led to a path of sobriety. They opened up the Bible. I was a Bible-based drug recovery program, and it's been 25 years sober since. I needed a job as a high school dropout who was addicted and sold drugs. That didn't look great on a resume. And ultimately, someone took a chance on me, and I started in a credit counseling agency in the United States. People who have debt call into those agencies that are nonprofits for help just to manage their money, to get out of debt and the financial stress that they find themselves in. I was able to learn and grow through that organization. American Consumer Credit Counseling is the name. Here in the US, it's now the Forbes #1 credit counseling agency in the country. But financial stress is universal, whether it's in India, whether it's in the United States, people everywhere, because it's part of the human condition. When we want stuff, and the economic principle of scarcity, the idea that we have more wants and desires than we have resources, no matter who it is that we are and how much money that we make, that financial stress is real. And I learned as a young person. I was a kid, a 20-year-old kid, we'll call it. No disrespect to any 20-year-olds who might be listening. I thought I knew everything, but in reality, there was still a lot to learn. And grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow, eventually become certified so that I could counsel people, work one-on-one, became a certified financial educator and credit counselor, and started the education outreach group there at the organization. We went into schools and homeless shelters and traveled around to help teach principles, the foundations of economic security, safety, and mobility. It's a matter of justice. It's economic justice. It's information that's critical and important, though there's so many, we'll call it snake oil salespeople who offer get rich quick schemes and a variety of different things that do so much more harm than good all too often. So knowing and understanding where to find correct information, safe information that helps us individually. Again, that when I say individually, it's a personal situation. Personal finance affects all of us as we figure out how to get by, how to survive, and move from survival past scarcity and into abundance. And abundance is more a mindset than who has the biggest pile of cash. Because I don't have to have the biggest pile of cash in the world to find joy, to find peace, to be financially well. And that's been an amazing journey of learning, of growth. Teaching others has helped me learn tremendously because it's a lifelong process when it comes to financial well-being and managing that financial stress and the idea of building whole health wealth. So domains of well-being, that's an ongoing process because it's internal work. It's my mindset, not necessarily the pile of cash that one may or may not have.
Absolutely, Matt. Absolutely. Thank you for this. And this is a learning how one can, build life from homelessness to a millionaire now that you are doing so many things. Not just you have earned your money, writing books, taking care of people in terms of, one thing I want to understand about, you working in credit counseling and being a part of that system, very closely helping people out of their financial stress is that uh, how would you like to tell people about financial stress? Is it that people fall into financial stress because of whatever reasons, or is it that the system creates or lures them into becoming, stressful because of lures them into financial stress? How would you like to put it from whatever your experience has been of the system and also assisting people come out of this stress?
Sure. And I think it's multiple factors and varies from person to person as far as where the source of financial stress might come from. When I wrote my book, Financially Capable, A Friendly Guide to Building Whole Health Wealth, I organized the book into 3 distinct sections. And the first section addresses some of what your question asks is what about the system, the financial or economic system that one finds themselves in? And the first section talks all about that because we operate in every single country around the world. The system might be a little bit different, but we all operate within a systems of regulations, guidelines, and we don't have control over that individually day to day. So in the United States, we have places like the FDIC and CFPB. For those who don't know what those acronyms stand for, the Federal Deposit Insurance Company and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and there's many others, SEC, Security Exchange Commission, different regulatory agencies to help provide financial safety so that people aren't taken advantage of, because that happens everywhere around the world. There's greed, and where there's greed and corruption, then there's someone who's taking advantage of other people. And unfortunately, that's a sad reality of the world in which we live. Some of that first section addresses systemic racism. And in the United States and other places around the world, unfortunately, it does exist. And different laws and things from history have excluded certain populations from accessing wealth building products. So that's huge and very important. So for some, that is a very real source of stress because maybe it's the generation before us, parents, maybe it's grandparents, depending on how old the listener is, directly was prohibited from accessing in the United States something like a mortgage, the ability to borrow to pay off a home over time. And that meant being excluded from certain neighborhoods, being unable to, in the United States, home ownership is one of the biggest wealth building vehicles that there is, and provides a lot of stability economically, but also within the community as well. And certainly around the world, there are some different principles that are very similar. Some countries don't have taxes. My family has immigrants from different countries. My wife was born in Hong Kong. My sister-in-law was born in Mexico. In Mexico, property ownership is a little bit different. And historically, how people build to secure one brick at a time so that their house could be built quite literally brick by brick. And taxes are much different than property taxes in the United States. So again, where you are in the world does determine a little bit of that economic environment directly. But with the rise of internet and Web 3.0 and all of these things that connect our world, it's an international economic system that we live in. And we won't go too deep into politics and talking about tariffs and things like that. But in reality, that is causing a lot of stress all around the world. And it's a reality in which we live. So that system in which we live and operate is a cause for stress for many. The second section of the book is financial psychology, behavioral economics, why we do what we do. And that includes things like addictions. So for me, my addictions in the past caused a lot of stress. And again, not every listener can necessarily relate to a drug addiction. There are process addictions. There's places where people overspend and are compulsive about that, and it becomes an addiction. We have a idiom, retail therapy, the idea that I can go and buy something and it's going to make me feel better. And it may for a moment. And actually, chemically within the brain, there's a specific process that's similar to drug addiction, where we receive that dopamine hit, the release of endorphins that momentarily help us to feel better, though bills rack up. And as a result, it might become even more stressful to afford food or to maintain our housing. Without being sober-minded, it becomes very, very difficult to work through that stress. So for me, that was one of my first steps. And what I encourage others to is to be sober-minded. And that means something different to everybody, whether that's facing our addictions and getting help with that. Because again, I don't believe in this idea of being self-made. We need each other. Conversations like this, Ajay, they're critical, they're important. And I so much appreciate what you do, because having conversations, connecting even around the world, as well as with our neighbors and the people that we might see day in and day out. We need each other, and we can help each other. We can help each other through painful situations and circumstances that on our own, we might not have the tools to pick ourselves up and move out of those challenging situations. So being clear and sober-minded, the ability to have thought and insight outside of just that stressful situation. There's a fantastic book called Scarcity, and it looks at when in poverty, people's IQs are actually reduced substantially. Some research shows up to 10 points. And that's significant. The difference of a 10-point IQ for some might be on the verge of genius level, and for others have deficits in thinking and function. And this is significant, and we don't have time for all of it. I love it. I geek out about it all. But just suffice to say that poverty causes stress. I mean, that's not breaking news or anything like that. It causes stress and changes within our brains that make it difficult to have rational thought, to think about 5 steps ahead. There's a popular book, Start With Why. For some, starting with why just isn't possible. When I'm in a survival mode, I'm not thinking about the ideal or the purpose that I'm on this planet for. I'm thinking, how can I eat? How can I survive today? How can I help my kids to not be starving? And when we're in that situation, starting with why just doesn't make sense. We need to start with the next best step. And what that is for each of us is going to vary quite a bit. But we each need to think and sometimes get help to think about what that next best step is.
Absolutely, absolutely, Matt. Well explained. And so this brings me to this particular thing, whole health wealth. What is this particular thing all about?
Ajay, thank you so much for asking. It's something that I'm passionate about. So whole health wealth is the principle, and it's research and backed by data, that the 8 domains of well-being are interconnected. So financial health, personal finance is my background, and certainly have talked a lot and helped a lot of people around that. But it's inseparable from the other domains of well-being. When we think about our physical health, our emotional health, the psychological health, our environmental health, our occupational health and well-being, they affect each other. In our house, we found that quite directly when I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019. And bile duct cancer is a very rare but very aggressive disease that just about took my life. And when I say just about, on July 2019, I was taken by ambulance to the hospital and coded on the table. And the doctors told my wife that I would not survive the night and should start making plans accordingly. When our health is taken away, there are no other problems. Financial stress doesn't really matter in that moment. It's health. And how am I going to overcome this? How will I be well? And that's at that moment all that matters. When we have a lot of other things to think about, worry about, and be concerned about, well, then in one sense, we're blessed. We're and not to that word is overused way too often, and I don't use it lightly. But ultimately, it's a point of privilege to have other things to worry about other than surviving the day. Whole health wealth is critically important because too often we can silo or separate each individual domain of well-being and focus on that for a period of time. There are many people, and maybe listeners can identify, maybe they know people, maybe they've seen or heard about stories where people work extremely hard and run their bodies into the ground and end up very, very sick. So the toll that financial stress alone can take on our bodies increases blood pressure and sleeplessness. It increases many of the different things that can lead to whether it's coronary heart disease or stroke. And they're serious. So if all that we do is think about our financial well-being and put 100% of our energy and focus on being quote unquote financially well, and our bodies suffer, then it's all for nothing. And it ends up in the long run being far more expensive for us or our loved ones who then have to care for us in our sickness.
Absolutely, absolutely, Matt. One quick thing I want to understand, Matt, is about your homelessness. How has your homelessness, being former homeless, shaped your perspective on wealth itself? People who have no money, when they get money, many of them just want to spend and live the life, even at the cost of health. I want to understand, and everyone from rich people have at the cost of health, they spoil their health. Many rich people are very, very smart. They understand about. So I don't know what is the one right side, but you have a perspective of both sides, from former homelessness to now millionaire. So help us understand about the perspective part. How can people develop the right sort of a perspective in spite of whatever the situation is?
I'll share for me, and for each listener, it might be a little bit different. My perspective of gratitude has made all the difference. My perspective that I can't control everything around me. I can control how I respond and react to those situations. And through them, no matter how challenging, I can still find joy. And joy is separate from happiness. Too often, as a person, I've wanted to, and maybe listeners can relate to, I've wanted to seek just comfort and happiness and feel good in the moment. And too often that's fleeting, whether it was through my addiction, whether that's wanting to eat good, tasty junk food, whatever that it might be different for everybody. But my perspective to maintain gratitude and know that the joy, even through challenging situations, develops in me a perseverance, and that perseverance grows my character, and that character develops hope, and hope does not disappoint us, is a perspective that I maintain as a practice every single day. I know what it's like, as you said, to have a little and to have a lot. And I know sometimes that's out of my control. There were times where I didn't have enough and I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, or went days without eating. I couldn't control 100% of that until I changed my mindset, because my mind was trying to jump 5 steps ahead. Oh, well, I want to do this and get excited about this. And sometimes was motivated to try to go in a particular direction. But motivation is much different than discipline and building that character that comes first with a shift in our mindsets. So for me, that's critical. And I found that again with the transition with cancer. And I say transition because it's an ongoing thing. We could afford the hospital bills, but to know what it's like to have freedom taken away. There were times where I was hospitalized or even intubated and unconscious and didn't have physical freedom to feel the sun on my face or even rain as it dripped down and wet my hair. That shifts my perspective. And it took work to work through it, because once I received a liver transplant that was life-saving, ultimately by grace, by nothing that I could do on my own. All I could do was put my hands into, for me, I have a strong faith, and ultimately into the hands of God and the doctors who were caring for me, and not fighting that was the most that I could do. I couldn't make myself well. I couldn't get a liver transplant any faster. It was a decision whether I would live or die. In my mind, the mindset that I needed to maintain was, I'm going to live. And ultimately, whether that's another hour or another day, maybe it'll be a week, I don't know. But I can still find joy despite those challenging circumstances, because I know that that was something that I could control and I can control daily. So maintaining that perspective of gratitude for me has made a world of difference.
Absolutely made a world of difference. So, Matt, one last question I want to understand is, having seen life from very close, and living the life, trying to help people, everyone else, what is it that you seek for yourself? You talked about your early days, you talked about your health, you talked about your millions, and also about everything else. So it can be very difficult for people to understand, okay, what is it that I should focus on? Should I focus on accumulating more money? Should I focus on health? Should I also focus on making sure that I do not get back to the same situation? So many things can be on one person's mind. That is why I'm asking, what is it that you seek for yourself now? Where do you focus?
My focus now is on living with purpose. And purpose, I define through mentors. Gavin, Brian Boucher have helped quite a bit. Purpose is the best of what we have to serve others with. And for me, a life of service, whether I have a lot or a little, I always have something to give. Whether or not next week our economic system collapses in the United States and I'm back to zero, I don't know. I don't have 100% control over that. I can try to make decisions and make my plans and work with my wife, and we're a partnership in this together. But if the whole world and economic system as we know it collapses next week, we don't have control over that. I can still live with purpose and I can still serve others. And it's a paradox of living a life of service. The paradox is, as we give to others, we're fulfilled. We're fulfilled in ways that money can't buy. We're fulfilled in ways that transcend, that go beyond even our imagination or possibility even of thinking. So for me, living a life of service and walking in my purpose is important and just a part of my life today.
And what do people call you to speak on? You are also a speaker. So I'm just curious to understand, what is it that they call you to speak? What is it that you want to speak on?
I speak on financial well-being. I help employers with their company's financial stress so that there's greater productivity in the workplace. In the United States, just as a number to think about it, my expertise is, so sorry for those that are not in the US, you can research your own country's individual statistics, but in the United States, about $47 billion per week is lost in economic productivity because of employees' financial stress. It's significant. It's huge. And again, we'll focus again on the human element, the human aspect. This is the case all around the world. The numbers might be different. Maybe it'll be rupees, maybe it'll be pesos, whatever that your economic system and the statistics show, the same principles apply around the world. Financial stress creates in us worry and focus on trying to fix what we perceive that problem to be. And if it's trying to get more money to pay our bills and our stress rises as we're receiving phone calls from people trying to collect on that money or thinking about the food that we need to afford so that we could give it to our family, that stress is significant and it affects employers. So my speaking is to not only educate, that's part of it. And that's the third section in my book, Financially Capable, A Friendly Guide to Building Whole Health Wealth. The nuts and bolts, understanding money management, understanding credit, and all of those important knowledge aspects. Knowledge alone doesn't get us anywhere. We need to apply it. We need to then, with that information, with that knowledge, have a transformation that brings about action. And with that action, it creates in us discipline so that those disciplines then become habits and we're not even thinking about it. And then it becomes our lifestyle. And through that transformation, that's what I speak about to different organizations, different companies. With that transformation, it then increases productivity in the bottom line for the businesses.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you, Matt, about all this. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, want to learn from you, want to take your help, also learn from your book. What is the best way for them to do so?
My website has all the links on it. So mattparadise.com. And also feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of the time when it comes to socials. I'm not on every single social platform. I don't have that much time or energy, or I choose not to give it there because our time, our effort, our energy is limited. And we can end up giving it all away and then having nothing for the things that are most important. So that's an important concept, is the importance of keeping the most important thing as the most important. We can give it all away wherever that is and end up completely depleted with nothing else to live. But to walk in purpose, it's important also to say no. I'll throw that out there, a free little tidbit, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.